"I heard you need a wife," the Apache woman whispered. "Then please stay here with me today." Samuel had been walking for days. The hot sun had burned his shoulders and his boots had worn thin on the rough, dusty trail. He had left his home in the east behind him, a place full of memories that were both painful and lonely. He didn't regret leaving, but the journey had been harder than he expected. He had heard of a small frontier town where work was available and where people sometimes welcomed strangers. He had hoped that by reaching it, he could finally start a new life. The town was small, almost hidden among the hills and the flat desert plains. Only a few wooden buildings lined the dusty streets, and the wind often carried the smell of smoke from chimneys and horses from the stables. Samuel noticed that the villagers watched him cautiously as he passed by. Their eyes followed him, full of curiosity but also suspicion. He had learned over the years that strangers were rarely trusted in such places, and that gaining respect required patience, hard work, and honesty. Samuel had started repairing fences on the edge of the village. The owners of the land were friendly enough but kept a careful distance, as if testing him silently. He worked from morning until late afternoon, hammering posts, tightening wires, and carrying heavy tools across the uneven ground. He felt the sweat running down his back and the blisters forming on his hands, but he also felt a sense of purpose. For the first time in weeks, he felt he was doing something real, something that could help him belong. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and red, Samuel noticed a shadow moving near the tall grass at the edge of the fields. He paused, his hand still on the hammer, listening closely. The wind rustled the grass gently, but the shadow remained. He was about to turn back when he heard a soft, melodic voice calling his name. "Samuel," the voice whispered, gentle and hesitant. He looked up and saw a young woman standing there, partly hidden by the tall grass. Her dark hair fell around her shoulders, and her eyes shone with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Samuel did not recognize her as part of the village settlers, and her clothing was different from theirs. He realized she must be one of the Apache people who lived near the village. His heart raced, not with fear but with a strange sense of wonder. "I heard you need a wife," she whispered, her voice so soft that he almost thought he had imagined it. Samuel blinked, unsure if he had heard correctly. The words startled him, and for a moment he didn't know how to respond. He had traveled alone for so long that the idea of anyone speaking to him with such familiarity and boldness felt shocking. The young woman stepped closer, her gaze steady and earnest. "Then please stay here with me today," she added, her tone filled with hope. There was no pressure in her words, only an invitation. Samuel studied her carefully. He could see that she was genuine, that her offer came from the heart, and not from obligation or expectation. Yet, he also knew that accepting it would be stepping into a world he did not fully understand, a world of traditions, customs, and lives very different from his own. Still, there was something in her eyes that made him pause and consider. He realized that this was not just a casual encounter, it was a choice. He could leave, continue down the trail, and remain a stranger in every place he visited, or he could take a chance, step into the unknown, and perhaps find the connection he had been seeking for so long. Finally, Samuel nodded slowly, a small smile appearing on his lips. I will stay," he said quietly. The woman's face lit up with relief and warmth. She extended her hand, and Samuel took it, feeling an immediate sense of trust and comfort. Together, they walked toward the small dwelling she had shown him, nestled just at the edge of the village where the plains met the hills. The house was modest but welcoming. Smoke rose from a small chimney, and the smell of herbs and cooking filled the air. Inside, the walls were decorated with handmade crafts and simple furniture, each piece telling a story of care and tradition. Samuel noticed that the house had a sense of life, warmth, and order. It was clear that the woman and her family valued simplicity, hard work, and respect for their surroundings. Her family greeted Samuel cautiously at first, watching him carefully as he entered. They offered him a place to sit and food to eat, but their eyes remained alert, as if they were studying him silently. Samuel understood. He was a stranger in their home, a guest who needed to earn trust just as much as he needed rest. He nodded politely, thanked them for their kindness, and tried to show his willingness to learn and respect their ways. Throughout the evening, Samuel and the young woman whose name was Naeli talked quietly. She asked him about his journey, his life before arriving in the village, and his hopes for the future. Samuel spoke honestly, telling her about the hardships he had faced, the loneliness he had endured, and the dreams that had kept him moving forward. Naeli listened attentively, occasionally nodding, her dark eyes reflecting understanding and empathy. In turn, Naeli shared her own story. She spoke of her life in the community, the challenges her people faced, and the small joys and moments of pride that made each day meaningful. Samuel listened with fascination. He had never experienced life in such a close-knit community before, and he realized that there was much he could learn from her and her family. As the night grew darker, the conversation shifted to lighter topics. They spoke of the stars, the wind that swept across the plains, and the simple pleasures of cooking, music, and storytelling. Samuel felt a strange sense of peace he had not known for years. The fear of the unknown, the tension of being a stranger, and the weariness of his journey all seemed to melt away in the warmth of this home and the presence of Naeli. By the time the fire in the hearth had burned low, Samuel knew that something had changed within him. He was no longer just a wandering traveler. He was a part of something bigger, even if just for that night. The bond between him and Naeli was delicate, but it was real, built on trust, curiosity, and a mutual desire to understand each other. As he lay down to rest on a simple mat near the fire, Samuel thought about the path that had led him here. Every step, every hardship, every lonely night had brought him to this moment. And he realized that sometimes, life's greatest opportunities came in unexpected forms, like the soft whisper of a stranger who believed in him enough to invite him to stay. Outside, the wind blew gently across the plains, carrying the scent of sage and the faint sound of distant drums from the village. Samuel closed his eyes, feeling a sense of anticipation and hope. He did not know what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, he felt that he was exactly where he needed to be. Naeli's whispered invitation, spoken with sincerity and courage, had opened a door, not just into her home, but into the possibility of connection, understanding, and a life that could finally feel like his own. The night stretched on quietly, the stars above twinkling like distant promises. Samuel knew that tomorrow would bring challenges. He was entering a world very different from the one he had left behind. But for now, he allowed himself to feel safe, welcomed, and strangely at peace. That single whisper, "I heard you need a wife, then please stay here with me today," would stay with him forever. It was the beginning of something neither of them fully understood yet, but it was real, and that made all the difference. The morning sunlight spilled softly through the small windows of Naeli's home, casting warm, golden beams across the floor. Samuel awoke to the smell of fresh bread baking and herbs simmering in a clay pot. The gentle sound of birds singing outside mingled with the distant murmur of the village. For a moment, he simply lay there, listening, feeling the quiet calm of a place so different from the dusty trail he had traveled for days. Naeli appeared at the doorway, holding a small tray of bread and fruit. Her eyes lit up when she saw Samuel awake, and she offered a gentle smile. "Good morning," she said softly. "I made breakfast. Please, eat before it gets cold." Samuel accepted the food gratefully, amazed by how something as simple as a meal could feel so welcoming. As they ate, Naeli spoke about her family and the community around them. She explained the customs of her people, the traditions passed down through generations, and the respect they held for the land and its creatures. Samuel listened attentively, fascinated by the knowledge she shared. He realized that her life was full of lessons he had never known, lessons about patience, respect, and harmony. After breakfast, Naeli led Samuel outside to help with the morning chores. The sun was higher now, warming the earth, and the air smelled of fresh grass and smoke from nearby hearths. Samuel watched as Naeli moved gracefully, her actions purposeful and confident. She showed him how to feed the animals, tend the small garden, and gather water from the nearby stream. Samuel was a quick learner, but he knew he had a lot to understand. Naeli, sensing his uncertainty, guided him gently, correcting him with patience rather than frustration. "You are learning quickly," she said, her voice warm but serious. "That is good, but remember, understanding takes time, not just hands that work fast." Samuel nodded, appreciating her words. He had always thought that hard work alone could earn respect, but he was beginning to see that respect also came from understanding and connection, from caring for people and the land with sincerity. As the day progressed, Samuel and Naeli spoke more about themselves. She asked about his travels, the places he had seen, and the people he had met along the way. Samuel told her about small towns in the east, about mountains and rivers, and the loneliness he had often felt in crowded streets. Naeli listened quietly, her eyes thoughtful. Occasionally, she would nod or ask a question, showing that she was not just hearing his words, but understanding the feelings behind them. Naeli, in turn, shared stories of her childhood, of playing along the riverbanks and learning from her elders. She spoke of her dreams for the future, of hopes to preserve the traditions of her people while finding ways to live peacefully alongside settlers. Samuel found himself captivated by her words, not just for their beauty, but for the courage they revealed. She had faced many challenges in her life, yet she carried herself with grace, strength, and wisdom far beyond her years. The afternoon brought new tasks. Samuel helped Naeli gather firewood, carrying heavy bundles from the nearby forest. As they worked, they laughed at their clumsy attempts to balance the logs, and at one point Samuel tripped over a root, nearly dropping his load. Naeli's laughter rang out, light and melodic, and even Samuel could not help but smile. The moment was simple, yet it felt significant, a small bond forming through shared effort, humor, and understanding. Later, Naeli guided Samuel to the edge of the village, where the Apache had cultivated small fields. Here, Samuel learned about the crops, the care needed for planting and harvesting, and the delicate balance of working with the earth. Naeli explained that every action had a purpose, every choice affected not only themselves but the entire community. Samuel felt a deep respect growing inside him, not just for Naeli, but for the wisdom of her people and the life they had built here. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, Samuel and Naeli sat on a small hill overlooking the village. The sky was painted in oranges, pinks, and purples, and the wind carried a cool, gentle breeze. Samuel felt a quiet sense of wonder at the beauty of the world around him, and he realized that he had never truly noticed such things in his past life, always too busy with survival or worry. Naeli's presence had opened his eyes to the simple joys that existed in every moment, the warmth of the sun, the smell of the earth, and the sound of laughter shared between friends. "You seem different from others who have come here," Naeli said softly, breaking the comfortable silence. "You do not just work with your hands, you try to understand. That is rare." Samuel looked at her, a mixture of surprise and gratitude in his eyes. He did not know if he deserved such praise, yet her words filled him with a quiet pride. It was the first time in many years that he felt truly seen for who he was, rather than judged for what he had or lacked. As evening fell, Naeli invited Samuel to help prepare the family meal. They gathered vegetables, ground corn, and prepared a fire for cooking. Samuel noticed the care in every movement Naeli made, the way she balanced efficiency with respect for each ingredient. He tried to mimic her actions, feeling both clumsy and determined. Nayeli's gentle guidance helped him improve, and soon they worked side by side, creating a simple yet nourishing meal. During dinner, Samuel was surprised by how much conversation flowed. Nayeli's family asked him questions about his life, his travels, and his plans for the future. He spoke honestly, telling them of his desire to belong somewhere, to find people he could trust, and a place he could call home. They listened thoughtfully, offering advice and stories of their own experiences. Samuel realized that this openness, this willingness to share and connect, was something he had rarely experienced in his travels. It felt comforting and grounding. After the meal, Samuel and Nayeli walked together under the stars. The night was quiet, the sky filled with countless points of light that seemed almost within reach. Samuel felt a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. He knew that this bond with Nayeli was special, but he also understood that challenges lay ahead. They were from different worlds, and while their connection was strong, it would take time, patience, and trust to build something lasting. "I am glad you stayed yesterday," Nayeli said softly. "It was brave of you." Samuel smiled. He knew she was right. Choosing to stay had required courage, even if it had felt natural in the moment. He had been ready to leave at any time, but something in her voice and her trust had made him pause and reconsider. Staying had been the first step towards something he did not yet fully understand but already valued deeply. As they returned to the small home, the firelight flickered across the walls. Samuel felt a sense of belonging he had never felt before. He knew that tomorrow would bring more lessons, more challenges, and more chances to prove himself. But for now, he allowed himself to feel safe, accepted, and connected to something greater than himself. The bond between him and Nayeli, fragile yet real, had begun to grow, and he could feel its strength even in the quiet moments of shared work, laughter, and conversation. Before he went to sleep, Samuel thought about his journey. Every step, every lonely night, every challenge he had faced had led him to this place, to Nayeli, and to the small community that had cautiously welcomed him. He realized that life sometimes worked in mysterious ways, presenting opportunities in forms that were unexpected yet meaningful. Nayeli's gentle guidance, her patience, and her quiet wisdom had already begun to change him. As he drifted to sleep, Samuel promised himself that he would try his best, not just to survive, but to understand, respect, and belong. The journey had been long and hard, but perhaps it had led him to something far more valuable than he had imagined. A chance at connection, trust, and a life that could feel like home. And somewhere deep inside, he felt that this was only the beginning of a story that would grow richer with each passing day, shaped by courage, patience, and the quiet strength of two people learning to trust one another. Days turned into weeks, and Samuel began to settle into the rhythm of life in the village. Each morning he woke early to help with chores, and each evening he sat with Nayeli and her family, sharing stories and laughter. He had grown stronger, more confident, and he felt a sense of belonging he had never known before. Yet despite the peace he experienced at home, life in the village was not without its challenges. Some villagers were suspicious of him. He was a stranger after all, and strangers were often met with caution. Samuel noticed the way some settlers would glance at him with skepticism as he walked down the dusty streets. They whispered behind closed doors, questioning why he had come and whether he could be trusted. It was a delicate balance. He wanted to belong, but he knew trust could not be demanded. It had to be earned. Even within Nayeli's community, there were questions. Some members of her family worried about his intentions, wondering if Samuel truly respected their ways or if he was only seeking comfort and shelter. Nayeli reassured them quietly, explaining that Samuel had proven himself through his hard work, patience, and willingness to learn. Her faith in him gave Samuel strength, But he also understood that words alone could not prove his loyalty. His actions would speak louder than promises. One morning, as the sun peeked over the hills, Samuel was asked to help deliver supplies to a neighboring settlement. The work was simple but required him to travel along rough trails and cross small streams. He set off with a basket of food and tools, eager to prove his reliability. Yet, even on this routine task, tensions emerged. A few villagers accused him of taking more than his share of provisions, whispering that he could not be trusted with responsibility. Samuel felt a pang of frustration and sadness. He had come here seeking connection, not conflict. He returned to Naomi that evening, weary from the long walk, and found her waiting near the small hearth in her home. "Do not worry about what they say," she said softly, placing a hand on his arm. "Your actions show who you are, not their words. You have already done more than they understand." Samuel nodded, grateful for her reassurance. Her confidence in him reminded him that patience and consistency were the keys to acceptance. He realized that earning trust was not about proving himself in a single moment, but about showing integrity over time. A few days later, a misunderstanding arose that tested Samuel's resolve even further. One of the settlers accused him of taking a small bag of supplies from a storeroom. The accusation was loud and public, drawing the attention of several villagers. Samuel's heart sank. He had never stolen anything in his life, and the thought of being seen as dishonest filled him with fear. He tried to explain, but the voices around him grew louder, some demanding proof, others questioning his character. Naomi stepped forward courageously. Her voice was calm but firm. "Samuel would not do this," she said. "He has worked honestly, learned our ways, and respected us every day. He is not a thief." Her words carried weight, and slowly some of the villagers quieted, considering her testimony. Samuel felt a mixture of relief and gratitude. Naomi's defense reminded him that trust could be nurtured through loyalty, patience, and courage, not only by actions but also by the support of those who believed in him. Despite this challenge, Samuel did not retreat. He continued to work, helping the settlers and the Apache people alike. He repaired fences, gathered firewood, helped in the fields, and assisted with hunting when needed. Each act was small, but together they formed a pattern of reliability. People began to notice, not all at once but slowly. They saw that he did not take shortcuts, that he did not complain unnecessarily, and that he genuinely wanted to contribute. Samuel realized that respect was something that grew gradually, like a plant nourished by sunlight and water. Naomi and Samuel spent long evenings talking about these challenges. She explained that misunderstandings were natural in a community made up of different cultures and experiences. "People fear what they do not understand," she said. "But when they see patience, honesty, and care, fear turns into respect." Samuel thought about the long journey he had taken to reach this place. He had faced loneliness, uncertainty, and danger, and yet each trial had prepared him to navigate this new life. One afternoon, Samuel accompanied Naomi to the river to gather water and wash clothes. As they worked, they laughed together, sharing stories of past mistakes and silly moments. Samuel realized that these simple moments, filled with laughter, conversation, and shared effort, were as important as any grand gesture. They built trust, strengthened bonds, and created memories that could not be questioned by rumors or misunderstandings. Even so, life remained complex. Samuel sometimes struggled with cultural differences, unsure how to behave in certain situations or how to follow traditions perfectly. Naomi, always patient, guided him gently. She explained that learning was not about perfection, but about effort and respect. She taught him songs, stories, and small rituals, each one carrying meaning and history. Samuel found himself drawn deeper into her world, feeling that he was becoming part of a living story that had existed long before he arrived. A turning point came during a small festival held in the village to celebrate the harvest. The settlers and the Apache people gathered together to share food, music, and dance. Samuel was nervous at first, unsure how he would be received. But as the day progressed, he found himself welcomed, included in games, dances, and conversations. People smiled at him, invited him to share stories, and even praised his efforts in the fields. It was a moment of quiet triumph. He realized that patience, honesty, and kindness could overcome even the most skeptical hearts. Naomi watched him with quiet pride. "See," she said softly, "they are beginning to understand who you are." Samuel smiled, feeling warmth in his chest. He had wanted to belong for so long, and now he felt the first true sense of acceptance. Yet he also knew that belonging was not a single moment, but a continuous effort, a lifelong commitment to integrity, understanding, and care. Despite this progress, challenges continued to arise. Small disputes, misunderstandings, and suspicions never fully disappeared. Samuel learned to face them with calm and humility, never raising his voice, never responding with anger. He realized that his presence alone could either calm or inflame a situation. By acting with patience, honesty, and respect, he slowly became a stabilizing force in the village. People began to trust not only his words but also his character. Through all of this, the bond between Samuel and Naomi grew stronger. They shared moments of quiet reflection, laughter, and even small disagreements that taught them more about each other. Samuel admired Naomi's courage and wisdom, and she appreciated his determination and willingness to learn. Together, they began to dream about a future that could bring both of their worlds together, a future built on trust, respect, and love. One evening, after a long day of work, they sat together under the stars, listening to the wind whisper through the tall grass. Samuel thought about how far he had come, from a lonely traveler unsure of his place in the world to someone who was slowly becoming part of a community. He felt gratitude for Naomi, for her guidance, and for the courage she had shown in believing in him when others doubted. "I have never known a place like this," he said softly, "and I have never met anyone like you." Naomi smiled, her eyes reflecting the light of the stars. "Then stay," she whispered. "Learn, live, and grow here. Your journey is just beginning, but you are already part of us." Samuel felt a surge of emotion. He knew that her words were not just a request, but an invitation, a promise of possibility, connection, and belonging. The night grew quiet, and Samuel felt a deep sense of peace. He knew that life would continue to present challenges, that misunderstandings and trials would arise again. But he also knew that he was no longer alone. Naomi and the community had shown him that patience, honesty, and courage could overcome fear, suspicion, and doubt. He felt ready to face whatever came next, knowing that each day would bring opportunities to prove himself, learn, and grow. As he lay down to rest, Samuel thought about the journey that had brought him here, the long days of travel, the struggles he had faced, and the choices he had made. Every step, every hardship had led him to this moment. He realized that life often tested people not just through obvious dangers, but through challenges of trust, understanding, and patience. And he felt ready to continue that journey, confident that the bonds he was forming now would sustain him through all the days to come. The stars shone brightly above, and the gentle breeze carried a promise of new beginnings. Samuel closed his eyes, feeling a sense of hope and determination. Life was not always easy, but it was full of possibilities, and he had finally found a place where he could belong, a person he could trust, and a community willing to see him for who he truly was. Naomi's faith in him had changed everything, and he vowed to honor it, one day, one action, and one choice at a time. Weeks passed, and the rhythm of life in the village became more familiar to Samuel. Each day, he rose with the sun and took part in the chores, from tending the fields to repairing fences and helping with livestock. What had once felt foreign and intimidating now began to feel natural. The villagers were watching him closely, and he knew that he had won the respect of some, but he also understood that true acceptance would take time and consistent effort. Naeli remained by his side, guiding him with patience and quiet wisdom. She taught him about the deeper meanings behind the daily tasks, how caring for the animals was not just about feeding them, but about understanding the balance of life, how working in the fields required respect for the earth, for the seeds, and for the rhythms of nature. Samuel listened and learned, gradually realizing that her teachings were about more than work. They were lessons about life itself. One day, while repairing a fence near the edge of the village, Samuel noticed that a few villagers had gathered, watching him intently. For a moment he felt a flash of anxiety. Would they judge him unfairly again? Would they whisper behind his back? But then he remembered Naeli's words. Patience, honesty, and consistency would always speak louder than suspicion. He focused on his task, hammering the posts with care and attention. By the time he finished, some of the villagers were nodding in approval, quietly acknowledging his dedication. Samuel's confidence grew with each passing day, but he also learned humility. He realized that acceptance was not a reward but a process. It was earned through actions, through respect, and through genuine care for others. The more he worked alongside the settlers and the Apache people, the more he understood that strength was not only in physical effort, but in compassion, patience, and understanding. Naeli and Samuel spent long hours together, sharing stories, discussing dreams, and planning for the future. Samuel admired her courage and intelligence, and she admired his determination and willingness to learn. Together, they began to imagine a life that could blend their worlds, a life where respect, cooperation, and understanding would guide their decisions. Their bond grew stronger, grounded in shared experiences and mutual trust. One afternoon, a sudden storm swept through the village. Dark clouds rolled over the hills, and the wind whipped fiercely through the streets. Animals became restless, and people scrambled to secure their homes and belongings. Samuel and Naeli worked together to move supplies to safer places, calm frightened animals, and help neighbors who were struggling. Despite the chaos, Samuel felt a surge of purpose. He realized that true acceptance was revealed in moments like this, when actions mattered more than words. When the storm finally passed, the villagers gathered in the square to assess the damage. Samuel noticed that some of the same people who had doubted him before now looked at him with respect and even gratitude. He understood that trust was fragile, yet it could be strengthened through consistent support and care, especially in times of need. Naeli smiled at him, a quiet affirmation of the progress he had made. As the days grew warmer, Samuel began to participate more fully in the community's traditions. He joined in small ceremonies, listened to the elders' stories, and learned the songs and dances that held deep cultural meaning. Naeli patiently taught him, correcting mistakes with kindness and explaining the significance of each action. Samuel embraced these lessons, understanding that respecting a culture meant not only observing its practices, but valuing the wisdom and history behind them. One evening, while sitting near the fire, Naeli asked Samuel about his thoughts on the future. "Do you see yourself here long-term?" she inquired gently. Samuel considered the question carefully. In the past, he had traveled constantly, never staying in one place for long. But now he felt a deep connection to the village, to its people, and to Naeli. "I do," he replied softly. "I want to be part of this community, to belong, and to contribute in every way I can." Naeli's eyes shone with pride and affection, and Samuel felt a warmth he had never experienced before. Over time, Samuel became a trusted member of the village. Children ran to him for guidance, neighbors sought his help with tasks, and elders spoke with him respectfully. He had learned the delicate art of balancing effort with humility, confidence with respect. He discovered that belonging was not just about being accepted, but about giving as much as he received, through work, kindness, and unwavering honesty. Nayeli and Samuel also began to plan for their life together. They talked about the home they would build, the traditions they would continue, and the ways they could honor both of their cultures. They dreamed of a future where their partnership would serve as an example of harmony, cooperation, and shared purpose. Each conversation deepened their connection, weaving trust and affection into the fabric of their daily lives. One day, the village faced a challenge that required all hands. A small herd of cattle had wandered into the hills and was in danger from the approaching storm. Samuel and Nayeli, along with a group of villagers, worked tirelessly to bring the animals to safety. The task was exhausting, but Samuel's skill, patience, and careful planning proved invaluable. Nayeli guided him, offering suggestions and encouragement, while he executed the plan with precision. By nightfall, the animals were safe, and the villagers expressed their gratitude. Samuel realized that through shared struggle and success, bonds of trust and respect were strengthened beyond words. Through these experiences, Samuel also learned to navigate the complexities of cultural differences. He understood that misunderstandings would arise, but they could be resolved through communication, patience, and empathy. Nayeli helped him see that every challenge was an opportunity to grow, to demonstrate character, and to deepen relationships. Samuel embraced this wisdom, finding that it not only strengthened his connection with the village, but also helped him understand himself better. In quiet moments, Samuel and Nayeli would walk together through the fields or along the edge of the forest. They spoke of dreams, shared memories, and imagined the family they might one day have. Samuel felt gratitude for the chance he had been given, for the guidance Nayeli provided, and for the opportunity to belong. Nayeli's presence had transformed his life, teaching him lessons that no journey or struggle alone could have conveyed. By the end of the season, Samuel's place in the village was secure. He had earned the respect of settlers and Apache alike, not through words or promises, but through consistent effort, honesty, and courage. Nayeli's faith in him had been unwavering, and together they had built a bond that would sustain them through future challenges. Samuel now understood that acceptance and growth were lifelong endeavors, nurtured by patience, integrity, and the willingness to care for others. As the sun set one evening, casting a golden glow over the village, Samuel sat beside Nayeli on a small hill overlooking the fields. The air was filled with the scent of blooming wildflowers, and the distant sounds of laughter and conversation drifted through the quiet evening. Samuel felt a deep sense of peace. He had come a long way from the lonely traveler he had been, and now he was part of something meaningful, something enduring. "I am proud of what we have built," Samuel said softly, turning to Nayeli. "Not just us, but this community and the trust we've earned together." Nayeli smiled, placing her hand gently on his. "And we will continue to grow," she replied. "Together, and with all those who are willing to learn, care, and respect each other." Samuel nodded, feeling the truth of her words. He realized that life was not about rushing to a destination, but about walking alongside others, learning, sharing, and building something lasting. The stars began to appear one by one, twinkling in the darkening sky. Samuel looked up and felt a sense of gratitude for every challenge he had faced, every lesson he had learned, and every moment of trust and connection he had experienced. Nayeli's quiet guidance, her courage, and her unwavering belief in him had transformed not only his life, but his understanding of what it meant to belong, to love, and to grow. As they walked back to their home, the village lights flickering softly in the distance, Samuel knew that this was only the beginning of their journey. Together, they had faced challenges, learned lessons, and built bonds of trust that could not easily be broken. The future held uncertainty, but also promise, a promise of partnership, growth, and the creation of a life rooted in respect, understanding, and love. The days had grown longer, and the seasons were changing once again. Samuel and Naeli had grown even closer. Their bond strengthened through shared experiences, challenges, and victories. Life in the village had become familiar, yet each day still held new lessons, new moments of laughter, and new opportunities to prove themselves to the community. They were no longer just individuals trying to belong. Together, they had become a team, respected and admired by those around them. One morning, Naeli suggested they take a walk to the hills beyond the village. The air was crisp, and the sky was a brilliant blue, dotted with white clouds drifting lazily. Samuel felt a sense of peace as they walked side by side, the path lined with wildflowers and soft grasses that swayed in the gentle breeze. "Do you remember when we first met?" Naeli asked softly, her voice carrying a gentle laughter. Samuel nodded, smiling at the memory of the quiet, almost magical moment when she had whispered those words that had changed his life. "I heard you need a wife. Then please stay here with me today." Samuel had never imagined that such a simple sentence could hold so much power. It had led him to a place of belonging, trust, and love. That day had been the beginning of a journey neither of them fully understood at first, but now, looking back, he could see the ways in which every challenge and every small moment had led them here. As they reached the top of the hill, the view stretched endlessly before them. Fields glimmered in the sunlight, the village looked small and peaceful in the distance, and the river sparkled as it wound its way through the landscape. Samuel took a deep breath, feeling gratitude for this life he had earned and for the woman who had believed in him when others doubted. "We have come a long way," he said quietly. Naeli nodded, her eyes reflecting both pride and affection. "Yes," she said. "And yet there is still more to build, more to share, more to learn. But I know we will do it together." Samuel reached for her hand, holding it gently. The warmth of her touch reminded him that their journey was not just about survival or acceptance. It was about partnership, respect, and love. Back in the village, preparations were underway for a small celebration. Samuel and Naeli had decided to unite officially, not through grand ceremonies or extravagant displays, but with a heartfelt gathering of the people who had watched their journey, guided them, and welcomed them. Word had spread quietly, and villagers from both the settlers and the Apache community had come together, curious and supportive, ready to witness a moment of unity and joy. The celebration began in the late afternoon. Tables were set with simple but nourishing food, the aroma of baked bread and roasted vegetables filling the air. Children ran through the streets, laughing and playing, while elders watched with quiet smiles. Samuel wore his best attire, simple but clean, while Naeli wore a dress she had crafted herself, adorned with delicate patterns that reflected her heritage. Both were calm, yet their hearts raced with anticipation and emotion. Friends and neighbors took turns speaking, sharing stories of the days when Samuel had arrived, the hard work he had done, and the courage he had shown. They spoke of the times when Naeli had defended him, guided him, and believed in him when others doubted. Their words were heartfelt, honest, and filled with admiration. Samuel felt a deep sense of humility and gratitude. He realized that his journey had not been his alone. It had been shaped by the guidance, trust, and support of the people who had welcomed him. Naeli's family stepped forward, offering blessings and words of encouragement. They spoke of the harmony that could exist between different cultures when respect, patience, and understanding guided actions. Samuel felt their acceptance in a way he had never experienced before. It was not just permission to stay, it was recognition, affirmation, and a sense of belonging that reached deep into his heart. The ceremony was simple yet profound. Samuel and Naeli stood together, hands joined, and exchanged words of commitment. Their vows were not elaborate. Instead, they reflected the truth of their journey. Samuel promised to honor, respect, and support Naeli, to work alongside her in all things, and to care for her and the community as if it were his own family. Naeli promised the same, pledging trust, guidance, and love, and affirming that they would face every challenge together. As they exchanged vows, Samuel looked into Naeli's eyes and remembered the day she had whispered to him, inviting him to stay. That moment had been the beginning of everything, the start of a journey filled with growth, understanding, and love. Now, standing together before their community, he understood how far they had come and how much they had built together. The evening turned into a celebration filled with laughter, music, and dancing. Children ran between the tables, elders shared stories, and villagers from both communities joined together in a display of harmony. Samuel and Naeli danced among them, their movements natural and joyful, a reflection of the trust and connection that had grown between them over the months. It was a celebration not only of their union but of the community, of the bonds that had been strengthened through effort, patience, and mutual respect. As night fell, lanterns lit the village streets, casting a warm, golden glow. Samuel and Naeli stepped outside, walking hand in hand under the starry sky. The air was cool and crisp, filled with the gentle sounds of the night, the distant murmur of the river, the rustle of leaves in the wind, and the soft laughter of villagers still lingering from the celebration. Samuel felt a sense of completeness, a deep contentment that came from belonging, love, and shared purpose. "This feels like home," Samuel said softly, looking around at the village that had once seemed so foreign. Naeli smiled, squeezing his hand gently. "It is," she replied, "because we have built it together, and because we chose to stay, to care, and to grow. Home is not just a place, it is a life we create with those who matter most." Samuel nodded, feeling the truth of her words in every fiber of his being. The days that followed were filled with quiet joy and continued growth. Samuel and Naeli worked side by side, tending fields, caring for animals, and supporting their neighbors. Their relationship deepened, grounded in shared responsibilities, mutual respect, and love. They learned from each other, celebrated successes together, and comforted one another through challenges. Each day was a reminder that life was not about ease or perfection, but about connection, effort, and integrity. Samuel also reflected on his journey before the village. The long, lonely travels, the uncertainty, and the hardships all seemed like preparation for this life. Each experience had shaped him, teaching patience, resilience, and the value of trust. Naeli's presence had been the catalyst, but the growth had come from every choice he had made, every challenge he had faced, and every lesson he had embraced. Together, Samuel and Naeli became an example to the village. Their partnership showed that understanding and cooperation could bridge differences, that respect and patience could overcome suspicion, and that love was strengthened by shared effort and mutual trust. Neighbors began to seek their advice, children looked up to them, and even the elders acknowledged the harmony they represented. Their lives were no longer separate threads but woven together into a strong, resilient tapestry. Years later, Samuel would often sit with Naeli by the river, watching the sunlight dance across the water. They spoke of the past, of the challenges they had faced, and of the growth they had achieved. And always Samuel remembered the words that had started it all, whispered on that quiet day when he first arrived. "I heard you need a wife. Then please stay here with me today." Those words had been simple, yet they had changed everything. The journey that began with an invitation had led to a life of love, acceptance, and purpose. Samuel and Naeli had not only found each other, they had found a home, a community, and a shared life built on patience, respect, and courage. Their story was one of transformation, showing that even in a world full of uncertainty, trust, love, and dedication could create a future rich with meaning and joy. As the sun set over the village, casting a golden glow across the fields, Samuel held Naeli's hand tightly. Together they looked toward the horizon, knowing that life would continue to bring challenges and adventures. Yet they also knew that whatever came their way, they would face it together, with trust, patience, and love as their guide. And in that moment, surrounded by the community they had helped nurture, Samuel understood fully that he had finally found his place in the world, one built not by chance, but by courage, choice, and the quiet power of an invitation whispered long ago.